Hello, this is Heidi Holycross-Lui at the University of Northern Colorado. Today we're going to be talking about how to form comparisons using adjectives. Specifically, we're going to use as plus adjective as and than. Let's go ahead and start with the unit overview. This is just a quick summary of what we'll talk about today. To begin with, we'll do as plus an adjective plus as. This is used to compare people, places, or things and show how they are the same or different. Not as plus adjective plus as is used to compare people, places, or things to show how they are not the same. And then we have comparative adjectives with er plus than to show how people, places, or things are different. We'll talk more about each of these in detail, but let's go ahead and keep going with our unit overview on the next slide. Toward the end of this video, we're going to be spending some more time talking about these forms. If you have a comparative adjective plus and plus the same comparative adjective, it shows how something is increasing or decreasing. The plus comparative adjective plus the plus comparative adjective shows cause and effect. Let's go ahead and get started with some example sentences so we can talk more specifically about the forms. The new Indian restaurant is as interesting as the other Indian restaurants. The new soccer player is as skillful as his other team players. So how do you make comparisons to show that two things are the same? Go ahead and pause and write this down. If you wrote the form down as plus an adjective plus as, you did a great job. You did it perfectly. Let's look at two more examples. The service at the new restaurant is not as good as the other restaurants. The food at Taco Bell is not as healthy as the food at the grocery store. How do you make comparisons to show that two things are not the same? Go ahead and write down the pattern you think it is. If you figured out that it's not as plus adjective plus as, again, you did it perfectly. Good job. Okay, so let's look at some more examples. The new Indian restaurant is bigger and louder than the other Indian restaurants. The new soccer player is taller and faster than the older ones. What are the comparative adjectives? These are the adjectives that are ending in er. Go ahead and write them down for me. Here we have 4 comparative adjectives. We have bigger, louder, taller, and faster. If you look carefully, some words need to change their spelling to make comparative adjectives correctly. So if you have a word that has a short vowel sound and it ends in a single consonant, you double the consonant. So big becomes bigger with 2 G's. If a word ends in Y, you change the Y to an I and then you add ER. So happy changes to happier with IER instead. Let's look at some more sentences. At the new Indian restaurant, the choices are more varied and more delicious than at the old restaurant. The old students are less confused than the new students. Go ahead and figure out what the comparative adjectives are in these examples. Here, our comparative adjectives are more varied, more delicious, and less confused. So how do you form the comparative adjectives with long adjectives? You can use more plus the adjective or less plus the adjective. Here, long adjectives are any adjectives that have 2 or more syllables. So if it has 3 syllables, you will go ahead and use more or less. If it has fewer than 3 syllables, you'll go ahead and add ER. Alright, let's look at some more examples. At the new Indian restaurant, the chicken tikka masala is better than at the others. Children are worse at controlling their emotions than adults are. Can you figure out what the comparative adjectives are in this sentence? Go ahead and write them down. If you chose better and worse, you got it perfectly correct. So let's look at these words. What is better the comparative of, and what is worse the comparative of? Better is the comparative form of good. Worse is the comparative form of bad. So some adjectives are really tricky and they have irregular forms for the comparative. On the next slide, we have a chart of these. Okay, so let's look at this chart. The regular adjective is on the left. We have one adverb, but typically these are adjectives. The comparative form is on the right. So good and well both become better if you're comparing two things. Bad becomes worse, little becomes less, far becomes farther or further, and many becomes more. Here we have a review chart. On the right we have the form and the pattern, then we have the way you use it in the middle, and then we have an example sentence. So on this slide we have as plus adjective plus as makes two things equal. The new Indian restaurant is as good as the old one. Just as plus adjective plus as makes two things equal, and this is a little bit stronger than as plus adjective plus as. The old Indian restaurant is just as fun as the new one. Not as plus adjective plus as makes the second thing better than the first thing. The old Honda Civic is not as good as the new one. More plus adjective plus than compares two things. The new class is more advanced than the old one. Even more plus adjective plus than compares two things, and this is stronger than more than. The new class is even more advanced than the old one. Here are even more patterns. On the left, we have less plus adjective plus than, and this compares two things. The new class is less expensive than the old class. Even less plus adjective plus than compares two things, and this one's stronger. The new class is even less fun than the old one. Adjective plus er plus than, this is again adjectives that have one or two syllables, compares two things. The new Honda Civic is faster than the old one. More plus adjective plus than, this is for adjectives that have three or more syllables. This compares two things. The new students are more advanced than the old ones. Alright, here are the spelling rules for ER. If it ends in E, you don't double the E, you just add R. So large becomes larger, gentle becomes gentler. Both of those only have one E at the end. If it ends in a Y, you change the Y to I, and then you add ER. Happy becomes happier, easy becomes easier. Both of them, instead of the Y, have an I. If you have a short vowel sound and a consonant sound at the end, you double the last consonant and then you add ER. Thin becomes thinner, big becomes bigger. Okay, so this is new material. Let's look at the example sentences. Prices are getting lower and lower. Work is becoming more and more interesting. The waiters are getting less and less professional. If you use the same comparative adjective with and, it shows an increase or a decrease. Smarter and smarter is an increase in intelligence. Less and less professional is a decrease in professionalism. Here, let's look at these examples. The better the pizza, the higher the price. The more exciting the game, the happier the viewers. You can use two different comparisons to show cause and effect. In the first sentence, better pizza is causing a higher price. In the second sentence, an exciting game causes happier viewers. This is Heidi Holycross-Lui at the University of Northern Colorado, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you've been able to learn more about how to compare things using adjectives.